Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you.
You too. So my name's Kurt Wagner. I write for Recode. You all know Stan, who's leading product over at Messenger. You guys have 1.2 billion users now, which makes you what? Like one of the biggest consumer products in the entire world.
I would agree.
You would agree. There's a million things I want to talk to you about, but I want to start with Asia. You were just in Asia. I always kind of think of where you guys are going with Messenger as being a WeChat model. So for those who aren't super familiar with WeChat in China, it's kind of a messaging app that does everything else besides messaging, right? You can pay your bills, you can book your airlines, you can do all that kind of stuff. Am I thinking of Messenger in the right way here? How are you guys thinking of it?
Well, we think definitely the internet in Asia sort of developed differently compared to how it developed here, for a gazillion different reasons, and reasons here are also different. But what Asian experiences prove is that there is a way where messaging apps are sort of encapsulating a lot of functionality inside, and people are using that for way more than just talking to their friends. And definitely that's something for us to learn and experience, because even our own apps are being used differently in Asia. And so that's what our Asian trip was about. We went there to sort of see how people in Asia are using our own app. And believe it or not, it's different compared to what's happening here already.
What's different about it?
People are using it way more to talk to businesses. And there is way more conversations between people and businesses that exist in Facebook ecosystem that are happening and facilitated on Messenger, happening in Asia, that's happening here. But that kind of gives us window into the future as well, and it definitely helps us to solidify our strategy in terms of how we are thinking about what we are doing here.
So I've thought a lot about that over the last couple of years. Is how do you change the mindset of a Western audience, I guess, for Messenger? Because you obviously have a lot of users in the US. I don't think of using Messenger to book my travel necessarily. So how do you actually get people to think in that way outside of Asia, where that has kind of been a predominant use case before?
That's a good question. And a lot of things that we actually did at F8 was to facilitate that very connection between people and businesses. Because the way we think about it is that we have two main ingredients in place. We have 1.2 billion people who are talking to each other. We also have 60 million businesses in Facebook ecosystem that are there on Messenger as well. And 20 million of them are active on Messenger. They're replying, they're talking to their customers. It's just what we need to do now is that we need to make it obvious that you can make that connection between people and businesses. And there are different ways of doing that. The good news is that we do believe that people, even in the Western world, are thinking about it in a similar way, in a sense that if you think about it, for the last 150 years, there were two books delivered to your doorstep. One was White Pages, which is people's directory, and another one was Yellow Pages, which is businesses directory. And Messenger is already people directory. What we need to do, we need to add business directory to it. And when we introduced Discovery tab at F8, it's our first attempt to go there. This is the place where businesses live. And obviously, ads will play an important role in bringing people and businesses together, because if businesses can advertise their services to people in the right time, in the right place, this also happens to be our main business. That's how we're going to start making those connections. And slowly but surely, it's going to happen. I mean, believe it or not, in Australia, for example, I met a person, we did a lot of conversations and a lot of youth groups. Like, you meet people who buy their solar panels through Messenger. They saw an ad, they start a conversation, they message that business replies back, and all of a sudden, boom, it ends up in transaction like that, which is a massive transaction.
And they're actually paying through Messenger too, right?
They can. And facilitating that in the messaging environment is something what we think is going to be the future here as well.
So you mentioned ads, and I want to get back to that. That's going to be your business model. Facebook is obviously a massive advertising business, so it makes sense. But before we move off of this, you have the people, you have the businesses. You mentioned the solar panel thing. That's great. I don't think about buying my solar panels on Messenger. Would you consider like paying? I know you said that people could advertise. They would pay you to get their message in front of me if you're a business. Would you consider paying businesses and saying, hey, we want you to use this product? Like Facebook has done this with video, for example. They've gone out and they'll pay video producers to say, make more video for us so that we build this use case and this familiarity. Would you guys ever do something like that to try and jumpstart this?
I would never say never, but we haven't had conversations about it right now.
People are willing to pay you for it.
It's not what's on my mind. No.
It's not what's on your mind. Okay, so let's talk about business advertising. I thought that there was going to be a payments portion to your revenue. I know that you can facilitate a payment, but I thought if I'm buying my solar panels from someone, you'd want to take a small slice of that transaction as a charge for saying, hey, we brought you together. You guys don't want to do that. Why not?
Yeah, we definitely don't want to do that, and we've been very clear about it for a few years now. Is that we don't want to be in payments business, and we want to facilitate the transactions, and we want to be friends with everybody. Payments business is deep and complex business, which we have a lot of partners who are specializing in, and we need to focus on something that we do the best, and from the money-making standpoint, that happens to be ads, and there is no point of trying to go into payments. So that's why we're going to continue to try to make money on ads, and when it comes down to payments, we want to partner with everybody, and we want to make it easy. Payments is a system with a lot of constituencies, and we are way better off partnering with everyone and making it easy for people to pay, rather than trying to get ourselves into those transactions and get our own cut of it.
So the ads that you're testing now, at least the ones that I know of, are like inbox ads, right? So I would open my Messenger inbox and there would be a message from you and a message from friends, and then I'd see like an ad kind of among those.
That's one of the things we're testing in Asia. Another one is that when you're actually buying ads in newsfeed, but the call to action is send a message. And so you're seeing an ad from a business, you tap on that ad, it opens up a thread in Messenger, and you can start talking to that business.
Right,
so
okay.
That's another
A few different options.
Yeah.
I think of messaging as being a pretty personal and intimate space, right? My private conversations are usually private for a reason. Advertising isn't always conducive to privacy. So how are you guys thinking about, surfacing something in my inbox there that I feel comfortable receiving there and doesn't freak me out as a user?
Well, all the spaces are sort of private spaces. Facebook newsfeed is a private space. Instagram feed is a private space. The inbox space is also private space. So if we would be starting to insert ads inside threads, that would be sort of going probably into the areas that might potentially freak you out. Might not freak out somebody else, but when it's in inbox and when you just see the ads that is relevant to you, for a lot of people it's just going to be additional content, and that's what we are experiencing right now in the tests that we are running. Because another thing is that what it leads to opening up a thread, and then you can actually talk to that business. So it leads to the same paradigm that you already used to. You're talking to businesses, you're talking to people, you can ask questions, and it's all initiated by you. If you don't initiate that interaction, then nothing happens. And so as long as we continue to adhere to those principles, it feels like we're going to be fine.
Yeah, and I've asked you this before, so I know the answer, but for those who are interested, you're not using my private conversations to target me, right? Like you're not saying, I saw you mentioned you were going to be in New Orleans to Stan, we're going to send you ads about being in New Orleans.
We are definitely not doing that.
Okay, that'd be a really great way to target. It'd probably freak me out.
We don't do that.
Okay, don't do that. You mentioned kind of this ad being another form of content, but then you also mentioned customer service scenarios, right? I'm now interacting with a business perhaps about a purchase or buying my solar panels, whatever. Do you think that most of the use cases for you to make money are customer service based, or could I receive a great 10-minute video from HBO in my Messenger inbox? Like, is there entertainment elements to an ad, or is it mostly utility for you?
So we actually don't even think about customer service necessarily as a way to make money at all. We think about customer service as a way to facilitate conversation between people and businesses that might eventually lead to transaction or might not, but it does build that habit of you having conversation with businesses on Messenger, to your original point of how do you bridge the gap. In terms of entertainment and other stuff, totally, if HBO finds value in having thread with people, and if people find value in receiving certain clips through HBO, we can totally see that working, and that's available today. A lot of people are following different news organizations. There are a bunch of, like TechCrunch has a pretty good bot, for example. You guys should too.
We should.
And people are getting their news there. There is no reason why they shouldn't be getting their videos there as well.
Right.
So yes, definitely these are the use cases that we want developers to enable. But we don't want to dictate what people do on our platform. It's an open platform, so we just hope that people will figure out the right way to address the needs of their users, and that's what we are building it for.
So you mentioned bots. I believe it was a year ago you kind of opened up the bot platform. At the time, that was like a really big deal, and I think a lot of people maybe jumped the gun in terms of what they expected from the bot. They were like, oh, great, now I'll be able to talk to a human-level AI that's going to handle all of my needs and wants. That's obviously not...
And that led to disappointment.
That led to a little bit of disappointment. Where do you think bots are now for you guys? Obviously, there's a large number of them. Do people continually actually use the bot? I will say, and I've told you this, I'm skeptical of the bot thing. A lot of them don't seem to fill my needs. What are you guys finding now that it's been about a year that you've been doing this?
Yeah, so the way we are thinking about it, that's a good question, right? And we've tried to be careful in terms of how we would be talking about bots, but everyone, as you said, expected a human-like conversation, which was hard for developers to do. And expectations were high, and that led to some people's disappointments. The truth is that the way we've been thinking about bots, it never was the end. It was always a mean to an end. Again, the plan was always to connect people and businesses.
Okay.
And in many cases, there is no bot needed. You can just talk to a human being, and that will be good enough. Like example, that guy who bought a solar panel, he never talked to a bot. He talked to a human being.
Sure.
But then that business can start building bots to make these conversations more effective for that business. That business can automate a bunch of tasks. For example, if people are asking, what time do you open? There is no reason for a human being to answer that. That can be easily automated.
Right.
And so bots are there to make those conversations more efficient for people and for businesses. And as such, they're just a tool. They're not necessarily an end. And so when you start thinking about them this way, there is no disappointment necessarily. It's just an API that is there to enable easier conversation when you want to do that as a developer or as business. And so from that standpoint, it's a completely different story, and that's what seems to be working right now.
So you guys have a kind of an AI assistant called M. I always thought that the bots were almost like a stepping stone to M being a little bit more universal, right? Almost like this one bot to rule them all type of thing. If I have M, I can say, hey, what time does it open? And I don't need to download the bot for whatever restaurant I'm talking about because M can go out and find that for me. Am I thinking of that in the right way? Like, how do you guys think of this M AI assistant working either alongside or in conjunction with the bot program that you have?
So M is becoming a platform that developers are also starting to build on. And one of the things we announced is Delivery.com, for example, was the first third-party developer who built on top of M platform. And The plan with M was that we can't yet do everything perfectly for everybody, so we're going to do everything for a small group of people, and it's human-powered AI, and that's how we released M. And then, as soon as we learned about certain verticals that we can fully automate, we decided to start releasing them one by one. But we have a platform, and that platform, which is M, starts to make suggestions to people based on what it can do when it knows that it can do it. And from that standpoint, yes, once M is enabled to everybody, you will be able to ask M for when certain restaurant is open, or you can go and talk to that particular restaurant. These are just different modes of interacting with restaurants.
Different ways to get to the same.
Different ways to get to the same. And some people will do one, some people will do another one, and we just don't want to dictate people what they should be doing. We just want to give them ability to get to the answers the way they would prefer to.
So we talked about not using our conversations to target people with ads. That's creepy. But M kind of listens in on your conversations in the sense that it could recommend an Uber based on me saying, I need to get from point A to point B. It's kind of running in the background, realizes I'm trying to move somewhere, and will then come out and recommend, right? So that's not an ad, but it's still a targeted suggestion, if you will. So
you can opt out of that if you want.
Okay, so if I don't like it, I can opt out.
Yeah.
But how do you, in some cases it's helpful, right? Like maybe I don't want to opt out all the way.
The way we think about it is that clearly we need to provide value to people so they actually want to use that.
Right.
And if we don't provide value to people, then whatever. We are doing it in order to provide that value, which is make the right suggestion at the right time. And that's what it comes down to. Do you provide value or not? Do you have utility or you don't have utility?
Right.
And the usage of data is a derivative of that. If we don't provide enough utilities, then we don't have
Right. If it's useful, I'll let it read my messages, and if it's not, I'm going to say no. Have you found a use case where you realize, oh, people are not ready for this use case yet? The Uber thing, like I said, that's helpful. If I'm actually talking, someone recommends an Uber, maybe I'd say that's enough utility for me to be okay with the fact that Messenger's kind of creeping in the background here. Is there a use case you found where it's like, oh, people really don't like that? Like that crossed the line, it freaked them out?
We found out that a lot of people are just starting to use encrypted messages for things that they don't want to in any way expose. So we have those secret conversations, which is end-to-end signal level encryption, probably one of the best in the industry. And people start that whenever, like, my wife needs my social security number. I'm gonna use that.
Send it over Messenger.
Of course.
Wow. All right.
Well,
no, that's great.
It's end-to-end encrypted. It's
put it to the test.
Device to device. Yeah, definitely.
All right. We only have like 2 minutes, but I want to ask you about M. Right now, it's text. Right? Like M is all about I text and say, hey, I need help with this, and it replies. Amazon is doing voice with Alexa. Apple's doing voice with Siri. Why are you guys doing text versus voice, and is there a day when I'm going to be speaking out loud to M versus texting with them?
So there are obviously a lot of people and companies doing a lot of interesting things in the space, and that's awesome. The way we think about it is that it's sort of like 3-step funnel, really. So if you are starting with voice, at first you need to recognize what you're talking to, and then you're obliged to do something about it. Second, you need to, once you figure out what you're talking to, you need to translate it into text, and then you need to NLP it, you need to understand what the text is about, and then you need to fulfill that request. So there is 3 steps in that funnel. And let's say you're really good at every step. Let's say you are getting step 1 with 90% probability, and step 2 with 90% probability, and step 3 with 90% probability. You are still in the world of multiplying probabilities, which means that the outcome of that exercise is actually lower than you would like that to be. So what we decided to do is that focus on that second and third step in the funnel and nail them, which also gives us ability not to react when we don't know what's going on. If you don't have to act on voice every single time, when M cannot make a suggestion, it doesn't make any suggestions, because like it doesn't know what's going on. But it teaches itself, and so forth, so on. So once we nail those things, then we can go into voice. But until we nail them, we don't want to go into the world where we teach people what we cannot do well.
Right.
We want to do whatever we do very, very well and build up. Otherwise, we're going to be in the world where people very quickly realize certain things that we don't do well yet, and then they might not give us another try.
Yeah.
That's why we're focusing on the bottom of the funnel right now.
Voice eventually?
Voice eventually.
All right. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.